I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I listen to STEM Talk, interviewing the most interesting people in the world of science and technology. Stay curious, my friends.
Welcome to STEM Talk.
STEM Talk. STEM Talk. STEM Talk. STEM Talk. STEM Talk.
Welcome to STEM Talk, where we introduce you to fascinating people who passionately inhabit the scientific and technical frontiers of our society. Hi, I'm Dawn Kernagis, and today also joining us is Dr. Ken Ford, IHMC's director and chairman of the Double Secret Selection Committee that selects all of the guests to appear on STEM Talk.
Hello, Dawn, and it's good to be here with you for this special episode about your experiences as a crew member on NASA's NEEMO 21 mission. The aforementioned esteemed Double Secret Selection Committee had no problem unanimously selecting you to be on the other side of the microphone for this special episode of STEM Talk.
Well, thanks, Ken. And it was certainly a great experience, and I was happy to get the chance to share it during the interview I did with Tom Jones. Tom is a wonderful colleague at IHMC and a very experienced former NASA astronaut, so it was particularly appropriate to have him conduct the interview.
Yes, it would be hard to find someone better qualified to conduct the interview. Also, our listeners get to hear STEM Talk's technical folks come out from behind the proverbial glass wall and ask some questions. Dawn, you grew up near Raleigh, North Carolina, and spent much of your youth cave and wreck diving in Florida and around the world. For more than a decade, you were a diver and a dive manager for a world record-breaking deep exploration project focused on the caves in and around Wakulla Springs State Park near Tallahassee. Can you talk a little bit about this experience?
Yeah, Ken, thanks. It was an incredible opportunity to work with some of the world's best cave divers and cave explorers, and definitely gave me a lot of unique operational experience working with some pretty talented folks and also with different research entities that collaborated with our project over the years.
Congratulations on your recent election to the Women's Divers Hall of Fame. That had to be a great experience.
Yeah, it was really cool to be sitting in the room with women that I've looked up to since I was a little girl. So definitely an honor to be part of that unique group of women explorers and scientists. Absolutely.
You came to IHMC from Duke University. While at Duke, you earned a doctorate in biomedical research and was subsequently a postdoctoral fellow at Duke. How did your time at Duke and your experience as a diver prepare you to be a research scientist at IHMC?
Yeah, my time at Duke was specific to looking at kind of academic angles, looking at how we can optimize human performance and looking at risk mitigation for those that are working in extreme environments. And then also as a diver, I was working from an operational perspective. So what's unique about working at IHMC is I get to actually combine those two very unique backgrounds into one and try to be the best researcher I can be.
It does seem like your background has ideally suited you for both your interests and your work here at the Institute.
Yeah, absolutely. A big part of my work at IHMC is focusing on optimizing performance and risk mitigation for humans in extreme environments, and that includes Navy divers who can face unseen enemies such as decompression sickness, oxygen toxicity, and nitrogen narcosis. So just like deep-sea divers, some pilots and astronauts also must deal with decompression and oxygen challenges.
Today, we are fortunate to have a STEM Talk exclusive interview with Dawn Kernagis directly from the Aquarius Underwater Laboratory. But before we get on to today's on-location interview with Dawn, we have some housekeeping to take care of. First, we really appreciate all of you who have subscribed to STEM Talk, and we especially appreciate all the wonderful 5-star reviews piling up on iTunes, and it's a big pile. These 5-star reviews really help make STEM Talk more visible on iTunes.
As we announced in our earlier episodes, the Double Secret Selection Committee has been continually and carefully reviewing the iTunes reviews, with an eye towards selecting the best reviews to read on STEM Talk. There are extra points for pithiness, wit, and of course, lavish praise. If you hear your review read on STEM Talk, just contact us at stemtalk@ihmc.us to claim your official STEM Talk shirt. Today, our winning 5-star review was posted by someone operating under the moniker Gucci Done It. As soon as we hear from Gucci Done It, a STEM Talk t-shirt will be on the way.
Interesting nickname. I wonder about its origins.
Yeah, me too. So here's the winning 5-star review, which is titled Stemming!
The best podcast, period. It is as if the double secret selection committee has hacked my Google search. Keep up the great work, team.
That's great. Thank you, Gucci Dunnett, and the thousands of other STEM Talk listeners who have helped make STEM Talk a great success right out of the gate.
Okay, now check your oxygen levels as we are heading under the sea for a live interview with Dawn Kernagis from the Aquarius habitat on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean.
STEM Talk. STEM Talk. STEM Talk.
Good morning and welcome to STEM Talk. This is Tom Jones with the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, talking with my colleague Dawn Kernagis down underneath the ocean in the Florida Keys as part of the NEEMO expedition. She's living beneath the surface of the sea, an analog to deep space expedition. So we're happy to talk to Dawn today about her work and her living conditions there. And Dawn, I'd like to get right to your experience, if I could.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. It's kind of fun to be on the other side. My voice might sound a little high, and that's because the air density is increased. So we all have relatively squeaky voices down here. So it'll be interesting to hear this when I come back up topside.
Dawn, we hear a lot of conversations in the background. Are those people just your crewmates talking back and forth, or are you actually conducting conversations with mission control?
Yeah, so that's actually a dive that's taking place right now. So they're on EVA. And so what you hear is Megan Bankin is actually on IV right now. So she's communicating with the divers. We have the two divers, Matthias and Noel, are in the water conducting a science dive. They're going out to collect and also pre-sample coral. And so Megan's communicating with them. And then we have communication that's also being relayed via a typed-in mission log. And that is going back to mission control and to the science team back at the surface.
Sounds very busy.
Yeah, we definitely stay on our toes, that's for sure.
So how similar is NEEMO to your other very extensive diving experiences? What's new for you on this trip?
So new for me is that we're living in a dry environment. So I've never done that before. I've never been in saturation per se. I've done longer dives that were deeper and we had longer decompression profiles, but never actually reached a point of saturation. So we are on mission day. For me, it is mission day, I have to count now, 6. So we're definitely in saturation. But like I said, we're living in a dry environment. And then for doing any of our in-water work, we gear up and jump out of the habitat in hard hat diving supplies. So we use it's not surface supply necessarily, but a supply back to the habitat. So that's unique to me too. I've never done any hard hat diving, which is great because we have constant communication back with the habitat and also with topside. We have communication with each other as we're going through our working dives, which usually lasts on about 4 hours. Some of them last a little bit longer, some a little bit shorter. And then, it's very different from what I've experienced in the past, just because of the different equipment that we're using and the fact that we're moving between being dry and being wet for the duration of the mission.
Great. How do you find the isolated living conditions underwater? It must be pretty Spartan. And I know you have some astronaut colleagues there, and how do they compare it to their experiences of living on the International Space Station? So give me your perspective and then report to me if you have any impressions from your astronaut colleagues.
Yeah, perfect. So I think it's fantastic. I think it helps that we have an amazing crew and an amazing team. So I'm down here right now. Our commander is Megan Bankin, who actually you know, and she knows you very well. She said hello.
Great.
And we have Noel Dutoy, who is a researcher with the Naval Postgraduate School. We have Matthias Maurer, who is with the European Space Agency and has previously worked on other space analogs, including the ESA Caves project. And then we've got these great habitat technicians who are very experienced commercial divers and military divers, Hank Stark and Sean Moore. So I think it makes a huge difference. I know we've talked in previous IHMC Blue Sky meetings about teaming and knowing that you have a good team together and good communication. And man, it makes such a difference. I could see if you didn't have a solid team and a solid crew that these isolated living conditions could be very, very different. I will say that the nice thing about being here is that we have support divers who come down to visit us on a daily basis. They don't actually come inside necessarily, but they bring supplies up and down depending on different experiments that we're running, samples that are being sent back up to the surface, like blood samples or saliva samples or DNA samples. So we have a little more interaction. It's not so isolated compared to what it would be in space. I'm talking to both Megan and then also Reed Wiseman, who was the commander for the first half of the mission. They said that is very much like living in space. And Reed has actually said he thinks this is the best training analog that he could see for an astronaut prior to going to space.
Very good impressions. Thanks. Now, you're down about 62 feet under the waters of the Keys there, and you're living at about the equivalent of 3 atmospheres of pressure. That must have some physiological effects on your body. Tell us about those.
It does. So like I said, one is that our voices are a little funky just because the air density is higher. You can't whistle unless you try really, really hard. The experienced habitat technicians can do it, but we haven't figured out the trick yet. Our ears is really interesting. So we can feel when the swells start to pick up overhead because you have pressure changes. Maybe, if you have 2 to 4 foot seas, you have these pressure changes of 2 to 4 feet, and we can actually feel it in our ears. So we're sitting here and constantly clearing our ears, and our ears are constantly popping depending on the weather that's above us. A little bit denser gas. So just you can feel it when you first step in, just kind of adjusting to breathing a little bit denser gas. And other than that, is we're hungry all the time. But I think that has to do with the work on the EVAs and maybe just the accessibility of snacks. So,
So the NEEMO is an underwater habitat that simulates space flight, and NASA uses it for team building, leadership exercises, practicing how to work in neutral buoyancy. It's like a great EVA practice arena. And they actually conduct exploration exercises to look to the future of deep space travel. What is the particular focus of this expedition?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a bunch of different projects that we're doing, both IV, intravehicular, and also EV. So like you said, looking at kind of planetary exploration analogs. So specific to the EV activities, this is when we do our simulated spacewalks, or what we would call water walks. We're going out and we're doing coral identification. We're actually working in conjunction with the FIU Marine Science team, the Images Laboratory there. And we're identifying different species of coral of interest for them, both shallow and deep. So that's something that's new to this mission, where we're doing some deeper reef exploration up to depths of 95 feet. And then we're working with the science team, both specific to real-time feedback and also delayed comms feedback. And then also looking at if we have a day in between doing the exploration and actual sampling, how is that information best relayed from the exploration team to the science team and then back to the exploration team with respect to sampling? So we have a couple of different ways that they're testing out with respect to a planetary exploration type simulation. We're also using geology sampling tools that they are looking to develop, again, for the planetary exploration. And then we're using some different tools for navigation, identification, like species identification, and also tasking. That's using the iPad, but using it as a water-protected iPad that we can take with us on the excursions that we can test out for, kind of cue cards that we can use for running through our tasks to make sure that we're staying on top of different objectives that we're working on.
Okay, very good. So can you expand a little bit on the scientific activities you're doing? You mentioned the coral reef rebuilding efforts. And, oh, by the way, what is FIU?
Oh, sorry, Florida International University.
Okay, very good. So back to the science. Give us some examples of other science activities that are going on both inside and outside the habitat.
Yeah, so we're testing some medical telemetry equipment that they're looking at using on ISS, and that's for relaying information back to a team of physicians that's topside, that's in our mission control. We have an experiment where we're testing out a DNA sequencer. It's called the mini PCR, and this is actually being tested pretty much in parallel with the NEEMO 21 mission by Kate Rubins in space right now in the International Space Station. So she's testing samples that have been kind of pre-prepared for her to see how well the mini PCR works in space. And we're actually collecting samples inside the habitat here and then running those through the PCR machine to look at bacterial DNA. So essentially what we want is to be able to identify different bacterial species using this new technology instead of having to culture things out as has been done in the past. So we're doing that experiment, which is really exciting. And I'm actually in the middle of that experiment right now. So I have a little break while my PCR machine runs. So they squeezed in this interview. So, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about that because as a graduate student, that's what I did all the time, bench top, in the laboratory. So this is really cool to be able to do it underwater. So.
Do you have a separate laboratory space, or is it all a combined bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, laboratory all at once?
Yeah, the latter. I'm looking at my mini PCR set up next to the medical telemetry data embedded in between some reef identification books and some duct tape. So everything is intertwined.
Very much like a space station laboratory, like the Destiny. So you're doing this science work with cooperation of the flight controllers involved. Where are they, and does it really heighten the space analogy to have a mission control to talk to?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. And you have the flight director equivalent, and everybody there that's working in mission control. They're all experienced with respect to working either in mission control or working as Capcom at mission control back in Houston. So that's been really interesting just to get their perspective on things and to get their experience in the whole communication relay. They are actually located back on land, so about 5 miles back at Aquarius Reef Base, at the actual offices of Aquarius Reef Base. So they've set up a makeshift mission control there for the duration of the mission.
Good. And the flight controllers, the mission controllers, they usually furnish you folks a daily flight plan when you're in space. What is it like to work to these flight plan activities on board? Is it an oversubscription? Are you overworked or have too many things to do?
Some days are busier than others. So yesterday was pretty hectic because Megan and I had a 4-hour EVA that was extended by about 45 minutes because we're doing such a great job. But earlier in the morning, essentially it was, like you said, it's the same thing. We're using playbook technology to have a timeline that's essentially our daily schedule, and we follow that and try to stick to it to a T. And I was told by Reed that one of the things when you're in space is constantly following that red line and trying to stay ahead of the red line as best possible, just with respect to the real actual time versus where you're supposed to be on your schedule and your tasking. So some days are, like yesterday was get up and I collect the samples from my study, which I can talk about in just a second. And then I had some vestibular function testing to do. So this is a study that we're all participating in. This has been really interesting. And then right to that, getting dressed out for EVA, and then the EVA, and then just kind of one thing after another. And then some days we had a dive that was shortened due to conditions outside. And so that freed up a little bit of time. But that's nice, to use for social media, for typing up blog posts and all that good stuff. So
good. So in the course of telling us about like a typical day on NEEMO, tell us about those activities that you're focused on.
Yeah. So for me, for my study, I'm actually looking at, I was talking about yesterday morning, I'm collecting both cheek swab samples and also saliva samples. And so we're interested in looking at epigenetic changes that occur in response to living in a saturation environment, and specifically in a mission like this. So we're not going to be able to tease out all the differences. So we're eating different food. We're doing the EVAs. We've got a different exercise schedule. We have a little bit of a different sleep schedule probably than normal. So essentially, it's just epigenetic changes that occur in response to living in a stressful environment like this. It's been interesting. So essentially, we get up in the morning around between 6 and 6:30, and make our coffee. We actually have to do our first round of medical telemetry every morning, and we collect blood pressure, oxygen saturation, hydration level data, and also our weight, and all that's recorded. So we have to do that every morning and every evening. And then we start delving into the day's activities. So yesterday was that, and the vestibular function testing. Then We did the 4.5-hour EVA, which includes about half an hour of getting dressed out, having the habitat technicians help us get our hard hat on and all the equipment set up, and doing all the surface checks and in-water checks before we leave the habitat. And then we went out, did our mission. So yesterday, Megan and I sampled, I think they said it was 18 species of coral that we identified in a previous mission. So that was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And then we made our way back to the habitat after that. And I'm trying to think of what else we did yesterday. It was all kind of a blur. I think I took a nap. I think I took a half-hour nap, which is nice. And then we had some more testing, some more medical testing, and answering. So we're actually doing some nutritional tracking. We're testing out nutritional tracking software that's been developed by the European Space Agency that's being used on ISS. So we went through a debrief on that and gave them feedback on the software that we're using. And and then everything kind of winds down after dinner a little bit. We just have some prep work for the next day's mission, just camera prep and prepping the iPads and whatnot before we finally go to bed. And then every evening we've been spending just watching all the amazing nightlife outside of our window just before we go to sleep. So pretty cool.
Do you have any free time? And if you do, how do you spend it?
Yeah, the free time is spent at the window, the galley window, watching outside, watching the different fish that are swimming by. It's pretty amazing. I just had a lionfish, as I'm talking to you, just kind of swim by. I've got a guy right now who's this little purple wrasse, actually pretty big purple wrasse, who's cleaning the window. We have spotted eagle rays. We had a squid last night. So that's always just kind of fun to just sit and watch and see what swims by. So.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let me go back to that description of your activities yesterday. You talked about epigenetics studies. Could you give us a sense of what that's all about?
Yeah, so essentially we're looking at modifications that occur with respect to how a gene is expressed. And so we're going to be looking at kind of broad spectrum picture, what epigenetic changes occur in response to living in a saturation environment. So we're going to be looking at cells that have been collected from the cheek, and also cells that are collected in the blood. So the cells collected in the blood are going to be a little bit different because they're going to be our leukocytes, or white blood cells. So the epigenetic changes that occur to those might be somewhat different from the cheek samples that we're looking at. But we're just trying to get kind of a baseline idea if there is any kind of epigenetic change that occurs. So we're looking at essentially molecular changes, molecular tags that are put on that change the way that the DNA is read out. And ultimately that changes how a gene is expressed and what protein product is made.
Okay, great. Thanks for summarizing that.
Yeah.
Is this particular expedition linked to any of the planned NASA deep space missions like the asteroid redirect mission or a lunar outpost or eventual Mars expeditions?
Yeah, the big thing is the Mars expeditions. So they're looking further out for some of the long duration space missions, some of the software and hardware that they've been testing, both in the habitat by the crew and also some of the planetary exploration analog work that we're doing has been focused on kind of long-range space duration and specifically Mars.
Thanks. And break for Billy. Is it just me doing the questioning?
It's just you, but would you like me to posit a question to her?
Why don't you do one right now?
I actually don't. Jason and I are just completely flabbergasted that we've worked with Dawn, and she's just an utter. We're so proud of her. We're just beaming with. So we don't really have any questions right now. We're just amazed that we're talking to her at the bottom of the ocean. So,
all right, we'll let you
Billy.
Conduct those fanboy activities, and I'll go on with questions. All right, let's get back to serious questioning now.
I'm blushing. You can't see that, but I'm blushing right now.
Well, this is really a unique opportunity to actually have this conversation with Dawn underwater.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I have to say, Tom, it was really cool because I told both Reed and Megan that I was going to be talking to you. They're like, "Oh, that's so great!" So I got some good Tom stories from them. So in a great way, they love you. So they both pass along their best.
And thanks. Give them a shout back to them. From me, and tell them I'm really rooting for them, and I hope they're going to have a successful mission, and I'm sure they will. So, what has been the biggest lifestyle adjustment living down there? What are you eating? Is it easy to sleep? Tell us about it.
Food is probably the biggest thing. It's actually been way better than I ever anticipated, but that's probably because we can also have stuff sent down that's fresh. So I'm a vegetarian. So prior to the mission, I've had a chance to kind of give them an idea of what it is that I wanted potted down. And so a lot of the food that we have down here is mountain house camping food. So food that needs to be rehydrated. So we have two kind of cooking sources. One is hot water on demand, which is awesome. And the other is a microwave. So get creative between mountain house, tortillas, cheese, fresh veggies that we can bring down, but we have to eat pretty quickly. You get pretty creative with your food sources. But I mean, I'm definitely not starving. I'm just having to get creative with what I come up with. And I'm definitely looking forward to a big fresh salad when I get up there.
And I gather that you all sleep on the same shift. There's no 24/7 operation. You guys all get to bunk out at the same time.
Yeah, correct. We bunk out. We have 6 bunks at the bow of the habitat and 3 on each side. And so we all sleep set sleeping hours. I mean, there's a little bit of flexibility there. Some of us stay up later than others. But and there is a 24/7 watch that goes on. And that's back at Mission Control, or actually back at Aquarius Reef Base in the offices there. They have a watch desk, and that's running 24/7 whenever they have a mission going.
Yeah, very similar to what we did with our shuttle and space station operations, where Mission Control does the babysitting of the spacecraft for you. So glad you can take advantage of that.
Oh, yeah.
STEM Talk is an educational service of the Florida Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, a not-for-profit research lab pioneering groundbreaking technologies aimed at leveraging and extending human cognition, perception, locomotion, and resilience.
There are a whole mix of skills involved to make an expedition like this successful. You have the mission controllers adding their experience and skills. What kind of skills do you need on the crew to make up a successful team down there?
I think one of the biggest things is having people who are kind of forward thinking with respect to kind of thinking next steps ahead. So you're not just thinking in the moment, but you're thinking how the next 5 moves are going to affect the next 20 moves, not just for you, but also for your teammates. Great communication capabilities. I think one of the reasons that we all get along so well is everybody in this team communicates very well. I think those are probably the most important things, and just, kind of a mentality where you prioritize team over self. I know that's not always the case, but for a mission like this, and definitely for a space mission, it would probably be exactly the same thing. You have to be thinking about the bigger picture team.
Good. And are there specific scientific skills needed for this particular expedition? For example, do you need a physician? Do you need a geneticist? Do you need someone who's an experienced spacewalker? Tell us about that.
Yeah, not necessarily for the crew. We have all different kinds of backgrounds. I'm a molecular biologist by training. We have astronauts here. We have a physician who was in the first half of the mission, and we have another researcher who's an engineer who does underwater robotics research. And so we kind of come from all different walks of life, and we all just kind of jump in feet first. And so that's what's so fun for me today, getting to do the molecular biology experiment, is because there's a comfort zone factor there. But with respect to the bigger picture of the mission, there's definitely, we have physicians on hand. We have people with all different kinds of experience. We have the science teams that are reporting back to us and helping us work out any kinks that we might have. That is typically on comm delay. So if we're working through a protocol and we have some issues with it, it may be a little while before we get an answer back. But we've got kind of a little bit of everything working with us. And plus, on the dive operations side of things, we have amazing dive support and people with a lot of experience in the water who know how to run a mission like this very safely. So just as a kind of stepping back, we're working with Aquarius Reef Base, which is affiliated and supported by Florida International University. And the staff at Aquarius Reef Base, they run missions like these, not specifically like NEEMO, but they run these saturation missions year round, and they're fantastic. I can't say enough great things. I know all of us feel the same way with respect to the safety and the professionalism the team that's here.
Yeah, with your experience, I'm sure you fit right into that professional diving team there.
Takes me back in the day when I was working professionally in the diving community, which is a great thing.
So what was the required training and preparation time for you to get ready for this mission from the time you were assigned to the end of the mission here?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not like what you went through, Tom. So we had a week of solid training at JSC. So we went out to Johnson Space Center and had a week of training, just going through a lot of the science and a lot of the different operational objectives, and then also starting to kind of talk through some of the equipment training. And then we had a month between that week and showing up here in the Keys. And during that month, there was some preparation work. A lot of it was just prepping for our own experiments and getting some paperwork out of the way and whatnot. And then when we came down here, we had a solid week of hands-on training on site. So that was specific to the diving equipment we're going to be using, the habitat, getting into the hard hat, which was a lot of fun, getting into that for the first time. And then also some more hands-on training with the different science objectives and reviewing what we had been taught at JSC. So all in all, 2 weeks of direct team or crew-specific training, and then maybe another month of just other prep work leading up to it.
And how did you get selected for this mission? There's only 6 spots for each half of the mission, I guess. And did you apply, or did NASA reach out to you?
I'm sorry. Our support diver just jumped up in the galley window while I was talking to you. That was awesome.
All right.
I'm on a Skype call. I'm on an interview, and Sean just scared the me. That was awesome. Okay, sorry. That was not the wildlife I was watching before.
Okay, Dawn, back to the abyss now. Let's get
go
going
back.
Here.
Sorry. So great question. I don't know. So I did not apply. Actually, I had talked to Bill Todd, who is the project manager, and he's kind of the founder of NEEMO. And he called me up one day. So he and I were talking about me doing a research experiment. And this was the epigenetics experiment that I was talking about that I'm doing right now. So that was already on tap. And so he said, hey, let's tag up for a phone call to talk about your project. And this is back in December of 2015. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to chat with you about it. So as we're talking on the phone, he said, what do you think about diving? And I was like, I will support dive. I will carry tanks. I will cook. I will clean. I'll do whatever you guys want. I was just to have an opportunity to dive as support here would have been fantastic, because I have a lot of friends that would love to do something like that and haven't had the chance to yet. And he said, well, actually, we're thinking about you diving as crew. What do you think about that? And I couldn't speak
Wow.
initially, but I said, absolutely. It wasn't even a question. So I was honored. And I think from talking to Bill, part of it is the research background, but also just my diving background and working in a team operational environment, which I did for a long time before I ever got into research. I did that for over a decade. So I think those are kind of the deciding factors as to why he picked me.
Mm-hmm. Well deserved. Good choice. An obvious choice for him, I think.
Well, thank you.
NEEMO stands for NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations. And does this experience that you're having now suggest that there might be other terrestrial analogs for mission simulation that can advance our progress into reaching into deep space? So, think about other environments, mountaintop, Antarctica, in a submarine. What else would you suggest would be a good equivalent to deep space?
Yeah, I know that NASA already does some work in Antarctica. They do some work in the desert. I know they do work. There's the Basalt Project that's in Hawaii. And the CAVES project, the European Space Agency, uses the cave exploration analog over in Europe, which is the same thing. Kind of you're separated out from the rest of the world while you're trying to conduct an operational mission. Like you said, a mountaintop would be great. Anything, especially with the fact that you have this extreme environmental exposure. So not only are you doing running through the operational objectives, testing out the equipment, testing out the procedures, but you're doing it in a place where you have to keep in the back of your mind the whole time. While we enjoy every bit of it, we're also living in an environment where a bad move could be detrimental. So that adds that pressure, which is realistic. I'm only speaking as someone without the experience, but I'm sure you can speak to it, is that you have to constantly think in the back of your mind that you've got to keep your situational awareness up and running the entire time while you're doing all these other tasks.
Very true. Very true. I remember one of my friends in space telling me at one point, we were looking out the window, enjoying the view of the Earth. And he says, just think, Tom, we're just 3 inches away from instant death. So that crystallized it for me a little bit there. Yeah. So you're going to finish up at some point just in the next few days, and you're going to have to return from 3 atmospheres back to normal sea level outdoor pressure. So how is that readaptation process done?
Yeah, so they seal up the habitat. Essentially, the habitat can be changed over to be just like a recompression chamber or a decompression chamber. And then we'll start our decompression. It's about a 16-hour process, and it includes breathing 100% oxygen at different intervals. All of this has been tested out by the Navy for running saturation procedures, just like they do on a regular basis. So essentially, we will decompress overnight. We'll have a decompression technician in with us to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And then once we're back at equivalent surface, then they'll do what's called a blowdown. So essentially, then they have to repressurize us so they can open up the habitat at depth, and then we'll hop into our gear and come back up to the surface.
Very good. So it only takes an overnight process. That's terrific. Yep. And what are your plans after you get out? You can have a little vacation?
I'll take a few days off, I think. I was told that I'm going to be tired. So take a few days down, and then I've got to start catching up on email and some other things. But it will be nice just to get out, maybe get a little bit of sunshine, take in some vitamin D again.
So one last question for our listeners, I think, and how can they get an invitation to work and live on Nemo? It sounds like a pretty extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that there's a form that you can fill out or something along those lines. I know if there's interest there, just start increasing your diving experience, your in-water experience as much as possible. I know that they're always looking for collaborators, especially on the research side of things. This mission has been filled with probably, I think it was about 15 different objectives. So the more research opportunities that we have, the better. So if there's something of interest on that side of things, I would definitely say, get in touch with the team and start talking to them about next year. They start planning these missions out about a year ahead. So pretty much once this one wraps up, they'll be looking for projects and starting to piece together the objectives for next year's mission.
Well, I'm certainly envious, and I'd love to have a chance to go and do that same kind of work, and especially with you down there. So that would be a terrific opportunity. So thanks a lot for sharing your experiences, Dawn. Any closing thoughts?
No closing thoughts. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me today. And I'm actually pretty good on timeline, so I can... there's not a huge push here, but because I'm actually ahead on my DNA experiment. So,
Dawn, the past few days, you guys have lost comms with topside via the weather above you. Yes. Do you have any sort of situational awareness of the weather topside, or is it just peaceful, calm ocean around? What's the environment around you, and do you have any inkling as to what's going on above you?
So it's interesting. So one, I was talking about our ears popping when you have the swells above. So when the seas are rougher above us, you can definitely feel it down here. Sometimes you can feel a little bit of a shake. The habitat is essentially connected to a life support buoy. So if that gets tossed around enough that we get a little bit of a shake down here, nothing crazy, but just enough movement to remind us of where we are. And then the swells, when they go overhead, you can definitely feel it in your ears. You can feel the pressure changes up and down in your ears. So that's interesting, especially the last couple of days have been a little bit rougher, so we could definitely feel it. And you can also see, if you look out the window, you can actually see the fish kind of moving with the swells. So you can kind of tell when it's a little bit rougher outside. Cool thing is we've actually been able to see at night. We get these really cool lightning storms down here, and you can actually see the lightning from the habitat at night. So you can see the water light up, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Wow.
Very otherworldly.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Fanboy number 2 has a question.
Hey, Dawn. I'm just wondering how your experiment's running.
Fingers crossed, so far so good. It looks like my initial steps for my PCR went well, looking at the computer screen from where I'm sitting right now. So fingers crossed, because I've got about another I think like another 4 hours or so of processing the DNA. So it should be interesting, but I'm hoping for good results.
Okay. So how moist is the environment since you are submerged in water, and does that affect your ability to collect samples?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's actually pretty dry in here. I mean, the biggest thing is getting samples up and down. So they have these dry pots that they use that are massive. Oh, they're different sizes, but they're really, really heavy. But they essentially are used to keep everything dry, so that space is going to be filled with air. And you send material up and down from the surface to the habitat and back using these pots. And the support divers work really hard to move those back and forth. And so just to be on the safe side, if you have electronics or things that you don't want to get wet, those are wrapped in either plastic bags or wrapped in something just to kind of protect them, just in case there's any kind of leaking. But for the most part, those pots stay really dry. But the habitat itself is actually pretty comfy cozy. It's dry. If you go down the wet porch, which is the area where we go in and out of the water from the habitat, that's obviously pretty damp in there, but they do a really good job keeping it nice and comfy inside the habitat itself.
Well, at one point you mentioned having a weatherproofed iPad, and I don't imagine that you meant just something in like one of the cases that you buy at Best Buy.
Yeah, it's called the iDive, and it's a casing that's been built specifically to take your iPad underwater. So it's pretty cool. We use it to take out with us on the dive and to run through any kind of reminders as far as operating specific tools, or for identifying coral. If we have some questions about a coral we're looking at, we can pull it up, and the science team has put pictures in and cue cards for us to run through to verify if what we think we're looking at is actually what we're trying to identify it as.
So Dawn, this communication seems pretty instantaneous, unlike space communication, I imagine, that Tom had to experience. What is the delay, and do you simulate delays since you are simulating deep space missions?
Yeah, so for us, we're good. But for any of the operations, we're on a 15-minute comm delay that's actually set up into the system. So just to simulate a long-duration space mission. And we do get delays. Today is a much better weather day. So, I mean, I'm just watching outside and there's no pressure changes. But as you noted before, Billy, last couple of days the weather was not great. And so I was trying to make some call. I was trying to call back home, actually talk to my family, and, it kept dropping out. And, it is what it is. So, and actually trying to talk, we have a real-time loop for any kind of emergencies. And even that, the comms were a bit broken between us and mission control and the surface teams that we're working with.
Well, this is awesome.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. It's been pretty amazing experience. Not pretty, extremely amazing experience. So I'm not going to be able to define it yet, but I'm pretty blown away. And also just working, a big part of it too is not just the environment, but the people I've had the chance to work with, and seeing, true leadership in action in an operational environment has been fantastic, and just a really great learning experience.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I listen to STEM Talk, interviewing the most interesting people in the world of science and technology. Stay curious, my friends.
One more question from me, and that would be, you mentioned the support divers, Dawn. Are they afloat directly above the habitat? Are they there 24/7? How close is the human support to the habitat?
Yeah, so they come out every morning. So actually, the week before I came down, before I splashed down, I just did 1 day of support diving because I had some other stuff that was going on back at Mission Control that I was helping out with. But so essentially, we would go out in the morning and we show up just before the EVA is scheduled to commence. And so the support divers bring down any relevant equipment for the day and stage it for the aquanauts to grab hold of and take. So we actually use a cart that's filled with like sampling tools and all the electronic equipment that we need, and syringes if we're collecting samples, and then we pull that out. But the support divers actually bring all that down, plus they bring down anything else that's needed for the day. And they kind of have a couple of different runs that happen back and forth to the habitat, also those pots that I was talking about earlier. And then they're usually out of here by mid to late afternoon, early evening. And so it's a daytime operation thing. And if the weather's really bad, they try to kind of cut back on the number of divers that they have out there just for safety purposes.
Okay, Billy, what else do we need to make it a wrap?
I'm not really sure. I'm not used to talking into the microphone. But Dawn, we're just proud of you.
Yeah, thanks.
And this is fanboy William Howell at IHMC, and fanboy number 2 is
Jason Conrad.
This is Tom Jones, Dawn's colleague at the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition down in Pensacola, Florida. We really appreciate your time, Dawn, and we wish you much success and a nice break after you get done with NEEMO.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tom. And again, I'll pass along the hello to the crew. And thanks, guys, so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I look forward to hearing how my voice sounds when I come back up.
You sound pretty good. Best regards to all the folks down there with you, and to the folks at Mission Control, too. I'm sure I worked with Bill Todd and some others there. So
yeah,
tell them I said hello, and see you topside.
I will, Tom. Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Dawn.
Okay, bye.
STEM Talk. STEM Talk.
That was certainly a fun and unique interview. How did it feel, Dawn, to be on the other side of the proverbial microphone?
Yeah, it was actually a lot of fun to be on the other side of the microphone, especially having Tom Jones interviewing me and talking to both Billy and Jason. That was pretty cool. And I have to say, having a simulated spacewalk happening in the background while I'm doing an interview with the STEM Talk folks, that was priceless.
I agree, Dawn. It was very cool. Kind of thing you'll only hear on STEM Talk.
Absolutely.
I invite you to visit the STEM Talk webpage, where one can find the show notes for this episode and learn more about Dawn Kernagis. This is at stemtalk.us.
This is Dawn Kernagis signing off for now.
And this is Ken Ford saying goodbye until we meet again on STEM Talk.
Thank you for listening to STEM Talk. We want this podcast to be discovered by others, so please take a minute to go to iTunes to rate the podcast and perhaps even write a review. More information about this and other episodes can be found at our website, stemtalk.us. There, you can also find more information about the guests we interview.